Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're diving into a really interesting academic paper that's sounding a pretty loud alarm about the whole global push towards digital learning.
You know the drill, right? We hear it constantly. Online courses, digital classrooms, a tablet for every single student. And yeah, the paper we're looking at today points out that this is always framed as this, great good, a definite sign that we're moving forward.
But what if there's a flip side? The authors of this paper, they raise this really provocative question. They're asking, does all this digital transformation come with a hidden cost, a really steep one? So let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first, let's set the stage. The paper makes it super clear. This isn't happening in a vacuum. You've got governments all over the world pushing for this huge transition to a digital economy. And that kind of massive shift, well, it's going to have a direct, powerful impact on education.
All right, and this is where the paper's main argument really starts to come into focus. The authors are basically saying this big push for digital education, it's not just about getting with the times, no. It's about something deeper. It's about changing the entire purpose of education, and maybe even creating a whole new kind of social divide.
So what do they mean by that? Well, the paper suggests that education is starting to look more and more like a business. Think about it. It's a sale of services. The student is basically a customer buying skills that they can then go sell on the job market. And when you have that kind of commercial mindset, the authors argue, institutions start focusing on the gifted students because, they're seen as a better return on investment. And the result of that business model? This is where it gets really interesting. The authors paint a picture of a new, two-tiered system, almost like a modern caste system. On one side, you've got the classic human-led education. It's expensive, it's for a select few, and its goal is to create innovators. And then on the other side, you've got cheap, mass-produced computer education, and its only job is to train the majority of people for very specific, very narrow tasks.
And get this, the authors use some really strong language to describe this. They call it a eugenics approach. A eugenics approach. They're arguing that this whole thing builds inequality right into the system from the get-go. It's intentionally splitting society into two groups, a tiny class of creators and a massive group of what they call people of the same button. Okay, so that's the big picture system. But what about the human cost? Let's zoom in a bit. Beyond these huge systemic problems, the authors are really concerned about what this new digital environment does to the individual student, psychologically and socially.
And they lay out a whole list of problems they see. We're talking about cognitive stuff, like losing handwriting skills, which they actually link to a drop in creativity and even the ability to understand big, complex texts. But it's also physical stuff too, from damaged vision and hearing all the way to potential health risks from electromagnetic radiation.
All of this, they say, is creating what they call a new kind of man, Homo Confucius, or man of confusion. I mean, what a term, right? This is someone who is totally hyper-connected online, but at the same time suffers from deep loneliness. The paper argues that all this constant online chatter is just a surrogate for communication. It's not the real thing, and it makes building genuine human relationships incredibly hard.
And to really drive home their point about dependency, they use this quote. The paper actually cites a neurologist from UCLA who calls screens electronic cocaine. Wow. I mean, that really underscores the argument that these digital technologies can be seriously addictive.
So, okay, if our social skills are getting rewired, you have to wonder, what's actually happening inside our brains? The paper dives right into that next, looking at the direct cognitive impact of relying so much on digital tech for learning. And this is where they introduce a really powerful idea from Professor Manfred Spitzer, digital dementia. The basic concept is pretty simple. Think about it. When we use tools like Google for everything, our brain stops storing the actual information. We just remember where to find the information. And this outsourcing of our own memory, the authors argue, could lead to a real, measurable decline in our mental abilities. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. The paper points to a really compelling experiment from Dartmouth College. Just look at these numbers. When it came to answering logical questions about something they read, the people who read on paper did way better than the people who read on a laptop. And that gap got even bigger when the tasks got more complex. So what does that tell us? The big takeaway from that study is that reading on a screen seems to train our brains to just focus on specific details. We get good at plucking out facts, but we really struggle to put it all together, to see the bigger picture.
We're getting the data points, but we might be completely missing the point.
So, all of this is building to the paper's final section, which is basically a huge warning about where all these trends could lead society in the long run.
The authors map out this path toward what they call a societal functional illiteracy. It starts with students being trained for super narrow jobs. Then, because of that, the whole idea of a well-rounded expert, a broad profile specialist, starts to just fade away. And the end result they're warning us about? A whole generation of people who might lack creativity and really struggle to understand anything complex outside of their one tiny little niche.
And just to land their final, and maybe most extreme point, the authors share this really jarring quote they found in a Russian strategy document. It literally talks about a future where nanoelectronics will be integrated with bio-objects, yeah, that means us, human beings, to provide continuous control. Just let that sink in for a second.
So yeah, it's a pretty heavy critical perspective for sure. But it leaves us with a really powerful question to chew on, doesn't it? In this massive rush to innovate, are we accidentally trading away deep, meaningful knowledge for simple digital convenience? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.